Muslims in China are not like we have in Europe. We are immigrants here in Europe. It's like we newcomers. Chinese Muslims have been in China for 1,300 years. They are part of Chinese society. And they're not only in Xinjiang. Many mosques in the Arab and Islamic world disappeared a long time ago, or they were changed so much that they you cannot consider it original. But some of the mosques in China are still the original. Okay, they were renovated, they were developed, but they are still original. This is world heritage. It's very important. But it also shows you the tolerance and harmony of Muslims because these were preserved. The Muslims in China may have managed to preserve their faith and their religion and their practice for centuries, and they continue to do that today. All the talk in the West about oppression of Muslims, the Uyghurs, is just pure lies. Nobody has presented any evidence on that. But all evidence actually points to the opposite, that China managed within a fantastic way to deal with that without destroying the culture of the Uyghurs and Muslims in China. And the United States and the West failed miserably everywhere in the world. And actually, they led to increase of terrorism, like their so-called war on terrorism actually supported Islamic terrorism all over the planet. Actually, what China managed to do in Xinjiang and in China generally against this problem of terrorism is a classroom example of how to deal with this problem of a real terrorist threat. There was, as you described, there was a real threat of terrorism that today. China is doing the right thing. And every week, if you have noticed, China is winning new friends. The Belt and Road is getting new members. Now we have 152 nations have joined the Belt and Road. The nations who are not in the Belt and Road are a minority now. They are around 40. So that's reality. Reality talks better than the propaganda.
Is there religious freedom in China? Are Muslim people oppressed in China? And what about the Uyghur Muslims in Xinjiang? Is Xinjiang like an open-air prison? These are all the questions that people outside of China had because of the bombardment reports from the Western mainstream media and the Western politicians. If you have been following my content in the past 2 years, you probably have already watched some of the content. Because as a journalist in China, I have traveled to Xinjiang multiple times in the past few years, witnessed the dramatic changes, either is the economic status or people's livelihood. And I encourage you to take a look at those content on my channel, subscribe to my channel, because I've interviewed people from all walks of life in Xinjiang. I've interviewed Uyghur Imam, Hui Imam, Uyghur designer, Uyghur musicians, or just ordinary citizens, villagers, different ethnic groups living in Xinjiang. And all of them have debunked the West's accusations about China. All of them found that the West cares so much about them is so hilarious. I also wrote articles explain the realities in Xinjiang, what really happened in Xinjiang, including the terrorism issue, the economic development, and also the cultures in Xinjiang. So feel free to take a look at my article, my vlogs, my videos. And you know what? These days is a very important holiday, very important festival for Muslim people around the world. On June the 29th is the Korban Festival, or Eid al-Adha festival. And people in Xinjiang, all the Muslims in China, all the Muslims around the world are celebrating this very important festival for them. So at this very important occasion, today I invited a friend of mine who is a Muslim from Iraq who recently visited China. We will discuss Islam in China, the counter-terrorism method in China, and also how to deal with the terrorism the whole world is facing. His name is Hussein Askary. He's the vice president from the Belt and Road Institute in Sweden and the West Asia coordinator for the Schiller Institute. So Hussein, welcome back to the show.
Thank you very much, Jingjing. I'm very, very happy to be with you again. I was also very pleased to meet you in person in Beijing when I recently visited China. And course, wish all the Muslims and everyone in the world pleasant Eid al-Adha. It's a very important, it's the most important Muslim festivity where people celebrate actually the pilgrimage to Mecca in Saudi Arabia today, where hundreds of thousands, I think this year it's 1.5 million people from all over the world, all nations, colors, and ethnicities, they meet in that little spot in Mecca for atonement, for forgiveness, for harmony, and peaceful coexistence. A beautiful phenomena which every Muslim must do or have if they can in their lifetime. And I know that there are many, many Muslims from China in Mecca right now participating in this wonderful event.
Yes, since you mentioned it, actually, I shared it on my Twitter as well because Chinese Muslims in different provinces went to Mecca, organized by Islamic Association in different provinces. So all of this coming from the different provinces. So all of them are doing Hajj in Saudi Arabia. I think that news, those photos themselves can already debunk a lot of lies. Those who said Chinese Muslims don't have their freedom when they're actually, with the help from the government, they went to Saudi Arabia, went to Mecca, to the most important thing, one of the most important thing in their life. And,
yeah, I really appreciate the work you are doing because, I mean, not everybody in the world can travel so much inside China to meet all these Muslims. And one of the things people don't really understand is that the Chinese community is not only in Xinjiang. The first Muslims actually they are from southern China in the Canton, and Guangzhou, Zhuangzhou, Hangzhou, all these things. Already in the 7th century, Muslims settled there, and they became integrated into the Chinese society. You can find Muslims and Muslim communities all over China, everywhere in China, east, west, south, north, and they are part of the Chinese society, which it's not like here in Europe, like Muslims are just recently immigrated to Europe. They are considered as outsiders. But in China, Muslims are part of Chinese society. This is very important for people to understand.
You mentioned something very important. I hope you can share with us more about this because recently you visited China. You spent over a month traveling to different provinces in China, and you actually went to different mosques in Xinjiang, in different provinces, had a wonderful time. I've seen some videos and images that you shared. So the first question is, what's your thought on Islam in China? And what's your experience in China in the past month?
Yeah, I think this was the most amazing thing I have done in many, many years. And it's very important that people travel to China. It's very important that people spend time to China, not just go 1 week to one city or one province. I traveled in 6 different provinces. I was invited by universities in these 6 provinces, but I also managed to spend enough time to go to visit, see people, marketplaces, go to museums, go to archaeological sites, but also to Muslim communities in Beijing, in Guangzhou, in Xi'an especially, but very, very fascinating experience. But my impression about China itself, I mean, we know very, very little or nothing about China. Even for myself, I was shocked that China, which I saw in this trip, and I traveled by high-speed train, which is an amazing experience. I thought I knew something about China. I didn't know so much until I went to China. I realized I don't know so much about China. And it's very, very important that we keep that in mind. We know very little about Chinese history, Chinese community, Chinese traditions, about Chinese political system, economic system, and all these things. Okay, we know about China's rise in the last 40 years. But I think it's very, very important that we get a clear idea on what is going on in China. I mean, what I saw in China, it's very, very important is that China is the most modern society in the world right now, okay? From a technical standpoint, urbanization, modernization, it's the most advanced right now in terms of infrastructure.
Really? I appreciate what you said, but even as a Chinese, I was like, really?
I mean, there are many things I was amazed, and people say, well, we do this every day. It's like taking the high-speed train, 350 kilometers an hour, and it comes on time. This is okay. There, China, there are many places where you still have poverty, you still have a bit of backwardness, but in the cities, in the major cities, it's very, very organized, very modern. Shenzhen, of course, I went to Shenzhen. It's like this amazing place. But not only it's modern, it's very green. I mean, people think that China, is like because there's so much desert and arid areas. But you go south from Beijing, anywhere south from Beijing to the southwest, and it's so green. It's as green and sometimes greener than what we have in Europe. It's fantastic to see that. Then we have it's a very safe and peaceful place. I mean, you can feel safe any time of the day. I mean, even many women from Europe have traveled there. They say, I can walk in the street any time of the day, even in the middle of the. I won't be worried being attacked, being robbed, or anything. And I could experience that. But also, I experienced that the Chinese people, are very happy people. I mean, you go to the marketplaces, you go to the city centers, and you see people. There's music and they're dancing, or doing other things like social activities just spontaneously. It's not organized by anybody. It's just people go there and dance in the park. They are very, very optimistic, but they're also worried about what is going on in the world because they know that their prosperity is dependent on a peaceful and secure world. And this is very important, a very, very important issue. And also the friendliness of the people. I mean, the Chinese people are so friendly, just amazing. And that's a reflection of the Chinese culture. Now, I just want to briefly say something about what I understand. I'm not a China expert. I keep saying that. We have many people in Europe and the US, they say they are China experts. They don't know anything about China. I'm not a China expert. But I managed to visit 12, 13 museums and archaeological sites in China. And it's really, really fascinating, the depth and breadth of the Chinese civilization. It's important to understand that it's continuous, has continued. Many civilizations came and gone in West Asia, in Europe, Egypt, everywhere. These are gone. But China, you have continuity, but continuity with evolution. It renews itself. Two, Chinese culture, it takes good impressions from others. It can absorb and assimilate the good things from other cultures throughout history. It has managed to do that. Like we have Buddhism in China, we have Islam is in China. So China takes the best of other cultures. It's not shy about taking things from others and learning from them. But also China gives. China is sharing. So it's inclusive, it takes, and it's sharing. It gives its own gifts of technological, scientific, or cultural progress to others. I mean, one of the fascinating musical instruments in China, the pipa, is from West Asia. The Chinese don't hide that fact. It's like this is something which China took in, but it developed it and made it part of its culture. It's one of the most beautiful musical instruments you have. So, but also China has given humanity so much. I talked a lot in my lectures about how important that the Muslims or Arabs learned making paper from China, paper on a industrial scale. This was a revolution because we had enormous activity, intellectual activity in Baghdad, for example, in the 8th century and 9th century, but we didn't have enough material to put it on and spread it. It was like internet today, more important than internet today. So paper helped many cultures because the Muslims were translating, the Arabs were translating things from Greek, Indian language, even from China, and then spreading it all over the world again. And that helped also the Europeans to learn again about Greek heritage, Plato. So paper making was like one of the most beautiful gifts China gave to humanity. It's still today, it's very, very important for us. Without paper, we wouldn't be where we are today. So these are some of the impressions I got about China. And this brings me to the question of Muslims in China, because Muslims in China are not like we have in Europe. We are immigrants here in Europe. I was like newcomers. Chinese Muslims have been in China for 1,300 years. They are part of Chinese society. And they're not only in Xinjiang. The first Muslim communities were developed in southern China on the maritime Silk Road. And it was through trade. It was never through invasion. And the Chinese emperors, the Chinese governors of the Canton, Guangzhou, Guangdong province, you have Zhuangzhou, Hangzhou, these were Muslim centers where the Muslim traders came there and they were welcome. And they could have trade, but also communicate even with emperors about Islam and Islamic. There's a famous dialogue between a Chinese emperor and a Muslim scholar about Prophet Muhammad. So Muslims were assimilated in the Chinese society. but they kept their traditions. This is what's special about China. I said it's continuous culture. It evolves, it takes new impressions, but it's faithful to its original character. And Muslims remain also, they could manage to preserve their religion, their faith, all these centuries. And also the mosques we have in like the mosque in Guangzhou, the Weisheng Mosque, the Xi'an Mosque, other mosques, even in Beijing, I visited, went to Friday prayers with my fellow Chinese Muslims. So it was a very beautiful thing to sit there and pray with the Chinese Muslims. And I could even understand some of the things the preacher, Imam, was saying, because he cited from the Quran in Arabic. It's very beautiful. But the thing is, we have this integration of Muslims in Chinese society is very, very unique phenomenon too. And these mosques, as I said, these are not only the oldest in China, these are some of the oldest in the world. The mosque in Guangzhou, the Weisheng Mosque, is built in the 8th century. You know, many mosques in the Arab and Islamic world disappeared a long time ago, or they were changed so much that you cannot consider it original. But some of the mosques in China are still the original. Okay, they were renovated, they were developed, but they are still original. This is world heritage. It's very important. But it also shows you the tolerance and harmony of Muslims, because these were preserved. The Muslims in China managed to preserve their faith and their religion and their practice for centuries, and they continue to do that today.
Very well said. And what you said, your observation about experience is really interesting. Because sometimes when I've been here for too long, I probably things are too normal for me that I don't know when someone else came here, they found, wow, thanks for sharing.
I was expecting Chinese people were saying, why are you so shocked? I said, well, this is really shocking for me. You know, it's shocking in a positive sense. And Chinese, well, this is normal. You know, I mean, the Chinese people, they love to eat food at the Muslim quarter because they love the food made in these. Like in Xi'an, I went to the Muslim quarter in Beijing. You have to be positively shocked by China. You have to be amazed because we know very little about China. I really urge everyone to travel to China. And see China for yourself. It's completely different than what you hear. Even if you are positively inclined to China, like I am, I'm a friend of China, but even my view of China was not really so clear until I traveled there.
You mentioned the mosque you visited. So I want to share quickly on the screen of the Twitter that you posted.
Hello, this is Hussein Askary. I'm talking to you from Xi'an's Grand Mosque, one of the most ancient mosques in China, and been centuries ago and has been preserved all these years. And Muslims have actually practiced their rituals here for centuries, and they continue until today.
Many people were so happy to see somebody visiting that place and showing the Muslims, you know, praying there. But also, it's an amazing place. This is like, it's not only a mosque; it's a museum. It has been preserved. I mean, the Xi'an Mosque was built originally in 730 something. That's a long time ago. It was then expanded during the Ming Dynasty in the 14th century. And what you see there is like the characteristics of the architecture is like this, it's Chinese. And some people, they think that it's Sinicized Islam. No, it's assimilated Islam into the Chinese. So the architecture is Chinese, but then it has Muslim characteristics. One of the most amazing things I saw is like, I took many pictures of that. I can share it with you. Like all over the mosque in the prayer hall, it's the only place to my knowledge where the whole Quran, the script of the Quran, which is a huge book, is carved in wood all over the mosque. It's very, very beautiful. And the question of the Chinese definitely were fascinated by Arabic calligraphy because calligraphy is important also in Chinese culture because the importance of expressing things, the importance of the word, of the intellectual content of the words and metaphors, which is very, very important. So this is a very special place. And in the world context, from the standpoint of architecture, I mean, it's a beautiful place from the standpoint of history, from the standpoint of many, many things, but also religion. Because you walk into that place and it's huge. It's right in the center of Xinjiang, but it's very, very big. And it has been preserved. And you see all these stone carvings where emperors have, made sure that this place is preserved. And one of the important emperors is the Ming Emperor, Hongwu, I think is, if my present. He wrote a 100-word poem, the Baizizan poem, in praise of Prophet Muhammad. And he reflects in that poem a deep understanding of Islam. So the Chinese way of looking at things is not like, this is a stranger. They say, I can assimilate that teachings, the moral, whatever teachings, into my own thought process. I don't need to be a Muslim, but I can assimilate that into my own thinking. And that's what is very important with Chinese culture. And today, China is also assimilating things from outside the world, but it's still remaining faithful to its own character. And I think President Xi Jinping is very, very clear on this question because the modernization in China has gone so fast. It's like a stampede. It's like these Spanish bull stampedes where people run in the street and the bulls are running. With that enormously fast modernization of China, how are you going to preserve your culture and your civilization? The continuity and President Xi Jinping is very, very clear on that. And I think the Chinese people are very clear on that too, because never in history a society so large has developed and modernized so quickly. And I think this question of assimilation, China takes in technological, but it keeps it Chinese. And this is not taking over somebody else, but it's trying to take the best from other cultures, which is very fascinating. All civilizations, great civilizations, they take positive things from other civilizations, but they keep their own character.
Exactly like what you said. I think most Chinese have the same thought. Like here, religiously, we have multiple religions in China: Islam, Christianity, Buddhism, all the religions all exist in China. And when they came to China long time ago, hundreds of years ago, thousands of years ago. So they became part of Chinese culture. And we have different ethnic groups. And it's very interesting, even though we have 56 different ethnic groups and they have different languages. And you know what? We all consider, I've talked to people from different ethnic groups. No matter which ethnic group they're from, which languages they speak, they all identify themselves as Chinese. So, and even though they speak Mandarin Chinese is the national language, but that doesn't mean I cannot be, let's say, Tibetan or Uyghur or Hui. That's all me. So, I mean, and in China, you take a look at Chinese history. During Yuan Dynasty, it was the Mongols that running China. During Qing Dynasty, it's the Manchurians ruling China. But no one is a foreign power. They all then became the Chinese civilization. All of us identify ourselves as China. So this is
this question, very important question of unity. This I saw especially in the museums. I went in Xi'an to the terracotta warriors site. It's very fascinating. But what I learned there, I always thought, what is so special about this place, about this, of course, the artistic, but then I realized that there's a notion of the unity of the Chinese people. That's why Chinese people and their leadership are so concerned about the question of separatism. To split the Chinese society, this is the biggest threat to Chinese civilization and to the modern society right now. And I can understand why China is very strong on this question, to stop and not allow this idea of separatism to seep into the Chinese society.
Yeah. So since you mentioned the separatism issue, I think we need to address the issue in Xinjiang because the West cares so much about Xinjiang. But there were some issues in Xinjiang. That's why they were taking stronger security measures in the whole region. And how to make the story short, because there were a period of, I would say, from actually terrorist activities took place occasionally from time to time in different parts of Xinjiang since the 90s until the 2010 2016, around that time, 2016 2017. So there were thousands of terrorist attacks in the past few decades in different corners of Xinjiang. But during their period, especially in the 2010, that period, it got stronger because I've talked to many local people, like Uyghur people. Traditional Uyghur culture, if you take a look at their traditional clothes, it's very colorful. They bring all the brightest color together, as bring all the jewelries in their clothes. And their traditional culture is they love dancing and singing. It's part of their daily life. After the farm work or after work, they would do the dance. It's part of the traditional culture. It's not organized. It's not a performance. It's just like, I enjoy what I do. That's my life. So music, colorful clothes, drinking, all this, it's their Uyghur people's traditional culture. But there are a period of years when they were suddenly told, you cannot do any of that. I have a Uyghur musician. Music is part of his life. He's a rock musician. And he was told they cannot sing, and they cannot cry at funerals. They cannot listen to music. And women suddenly cannot wear other clothes than burqa, and they cannot talk to men that are not Muslims. So, I mean, they were forced to accept some cultures that are not part of their culture. And it was forced on them. Many of them were not happy with that. But during those times,
but it was not forced on them by the Chinese government.
Yeah. So, I mean, this is the real issues many people told me. And actually, there are many, CGTN done some documentaries showing certain footage of certain cases of the extreme violence. And I went to the museum in Urumqi, where they showcase all this, the footage and photo of terrorist attacks that took place in Xinjiang. But those images are just too violent, too bloody to be shown public online, so you have to be there to see what they display, only exhibited in that museum. So it's not just a racial issue. Many Uyghur people were targeted because Western audiences tend to equal Uyghurs as Muslims. But no, not all Uyghurs are Muslims. And not all Muslims are Uyghurs. In China, like Muslim people exist there were 10 different ethnic groups are Muslims. And Uyghurs, many of them, they will follow some traditions, like they only eat halal food, and they will celebrate the Korban festival, but they're not religious. It became part of their daily traditions. So, I mean, that's the reality. Not all Uyghurs are Muslims. But those Uyghurs who are not Muslims will be targeted by the extremists. How can you not be a Muslim? So there were certain years that happened. And also, there are some Uyghur Muslims who are imams that are totally against this radicalized ideology. And they were being murdered by the extremists. There were many cases, many photos of Uyghur imams being beheaded in the public in front of the Idikar Mosque in Kashgar. I bring this up just to let people know it was really, really bad in Xinjiang during certain years because the radicalized ideology spread to Xinjiang and forcing people to accept it. And that created the racial issues because there were no racial issues before. Han people, Uyghur people, Kazakh people living in Xinjiang, they all coexisted with each other for centuries, since Han Dynasty, since Tang Dynasty in Xinjiang. But suddenly, during those years, it became an issue. So certain people were forcing those ideas onto those people. That's why there were counter-terrorism measures taken in Xinjiang, and also those who were influenced by the extreme ideology. Some of them were taken to the vocational training center. What they learned in those vocational training center first is de-radicalize, and then they can learn Mandarin, which will give them more opportunities to different work and even go to universities. And second, they can learn a skill, vocational skill. Like I interviewed 2 women from Kashgar who used to be influenced by this radicalized ideology. They went to the vocational training center, and they said and they learned the computer skills from the vocational training center. They learned a lot of the skills, and after graduated, now they are working as the head of the women affairs in their village, in their county. So they have a much better job, and they dress very fresh fashion as well, because okay, I can do this, I can do a lot of things. So these are the dramatic changes. So these are the counterterrorism counterterrorism measures taken in Xinjiang. That's the reality in Xinjiang that Western mainstream media never shown people to the outside of China. So I want to ask your opinion. The counterterrorism measures taken in China. What's your thought? And do you think that's a big concern to you as a Muslim?
No, on the contrary. Actually, what China managed to do in Xinjiang and in China generally against this problem of terrorism is a classroom example of how to deal with this problem of a real terrorist threat. There was, as you described, there was a real threat of terrorism in the country. People were killed. But then how to deal with it? You have, on the one hand, security measures, which are necessary to take, like any country, to preserve through police, security forces, and so on. But then you have to take measures of social, economic development. This is what has been missing all over the world in dealing with terrorism. What you described in terms of extremism, in terms of terrorism, in terms of forcing people to behave and dress in a certain way. This was not only Xinjiang, this was all over the Muslim world, from Morocco all the way to the borders of China. In the 90s, especially because we have this radicalization movement, which has its background in Western support to Islamic terrorist groups as a tool of geopolitics during the Cold War. I can come back to that question because Islamic radicalism, militancy, terrorism was created by the British Empire and then was adopted by the Americans. And now, until today, the United States and Britain still support certain Islamic terrorist groups. But that's another. But the question is, what China managed to do through these social economic development processes is that you go to the root of the problem, because radicalism targets people who are frustrated, underdeveloped. And when you develop that region with the positive way, and you give their life a meaning in a different sense, then the radical forces will have a difficult time dealing with that. But at the same time, you have to put security measures there to make sure that this does not emerge as a security threat. And all the talk in the West about oppression of Muslims, the Uyghurs, is just pure lies. Nobody has presented any evidence on that. But all evidence actually points to the opposite, that China managed within a fantastic way to deal with that without destroying the culture of the Uyghurs and Muslims in China. And the United States and the West failed miserably everywhere in the world. And actually, they led to increase of terrorism, like their so-called war on terrorism actually supported Islamic terrorism all over the planet. Until recently, now it's stabilizing a little bit, especially with the United States withdrawing from Afghanistan, which is another disaster. So the world has to learn from how China managed to deal with this problem, which we call peace through economic development. You can also have security through economic development. And all these things, I have a souvenir from China. Chinese currency. But if you look at here in the scripts, you have both Chinese, English, and Arabic characters, which is the language of the Uyghurs. And China put it on its national currency. This never happened in Europe or the United States, to have not the national language, but a minority language on your national currency. And all over China, you can see these in the Muslim quarters. There's script Arabic. So I can read the script, but I don't understand the meaning of it, that it's Arabic alphabet. So China, I mean, many Muslim countries sent delegations to Xinjiang. At the Organization of Islamic Conference, I mean, we had 30 countries who signed a letter saying that they don't see any evidence of what is being alleged about China. Actually, they praised China's way of dealing with this question of terrorism and extremism in China. And they considered a great model for that. And now China is actually, look, China is not a Muslim country, but look what it managed to do. They brought two Muslim countries who were at war with each other, proxy war, bloody religious war, which we in Iraq paid the price for through this Shia-Sunni divide. China brought these two antagonistic forces together, and now they're normalizing relations. This is incredible. You know, this is nobody in the West has managed to deal with that. And the problem is, the reason why the United States and the West generally, or the British and the Americans, never managed to solve this problem of extremism is because they support these extremist forces. They use them as a tool. And this goes back to actually the late 19th century, beginning of the 20th century, where you had, you know, the British and French were controlling large parts of West Asia, North Africa, and there were resistance movements against British imperialism. And you had the emergence of, it started with actually religious leaders in these countries, because the Ottoman Empire was dissolved, which controlled these areas. And then we didn't have states, governments in these regions. So there are religious leaders in Libya, in Algeria, in Morocco, in Sudan. They took the fight against the colonialist powers. But then with the 20th century emerging, we had intellectuals organizing patriotic nationalist movements, for example, in Egypt, against the British. So the British invented this idea, the British intelligence, and we have the whole background that you can use backward Islamic teaching and Islamic groups to encounter the nationalist movement, the intellectuals, by saying these are God deniers, especially when after World War II with the Cold War, they supported, like, for example, the Muslim Brotherhood and other extreme Islamic groups, like the Salafist, Wahhabi, so-called, which came into Xinjiang. And, you know, that's what we are describing. These are Salafist groups who say music is not allowed. Women should stay at home. They should not, you know, they get education, everything. This is what that tradition is. But these were tools of geopolitics. So after World War II, during the Cold War, any nation which tried to strive to strengthen its economy, to get rid of the control of the British and American powers, were described as God-denying communists. We had it in Iraq, we had it with Egypt and Jamal Abdel Nasser. The Muslim Brotherhood tried to assassinate him. And then with the Afghanistan war, you know, with the attempt to, you know, destroy the Soviet Union, there's a policy. It was designed by a British intelligence asset scholar, Bernard Lewis. You know, it's called the arc of crisis. The idea was to set fires all over the border south of the Soviet Union, where you have Muslim communities, to destabilize the Soviet Union, and later, of course, China. But the main target was the Soviet Union. This was also, it goes back to the great game between the British Empire and the Russian Empire in the 18th and 19th century. So British intelligence have played the Islamic card for a long time, but then the United States got into this game and started also working with the British intelligence for example, in Afghanistan, when they organized, they first provoked a counterattack from the Russians into Afghanistan, and then they mobilized all these Islamic forces. The United States and the British, they even convinced the government of Egypt to release, dangerous extremists from prison and send them to Afghanistan for training to fight the communists. So when the Afghan war ended and the Soviet Union was dissolved in 1989, all these Islamic forces which were gathered in Afghanistan and in Pakistan, which was the backyard for this operation, now they were spread all over the world, back into their countries in West Asia and North Africa, and some of them went to Europe. And then we had this new phenomena of Islamic terrorism, Al-Qaeda, all these things. I mean, these people, we had a report in 1995 already where we mapped all the terrorist groups in the world, and they had offices in London, including Osama bin Laden's group before it became Al-Qaeda. So this was used to destabilize nations who are not following the script of Anglo-American policies. So this, what you experienced in Xinjiang is part of that global thing. But in China, you solved that problem in a very good way. And now the population in Xinjiang, they can both preserve their religion, their traditions, but participate in the amazing modernization process of China, which will help their future generations to prosper. Xinjiang has become a key backbone of the Belt and Road Initiative, and it's going to continue to develop. There are enormous resources in Xinjiang, which will play a key, important role in the development of China, but also for the population in Xinjiang. So this is a model which everybody in the world needs to learn from, especially in the Muslim countries right now.
So you just showed us the 100 yuan bill of Chinese currency, and you recognize the Uyghur language, which very similar to Arabic language. And there are also other languages written on the currency. Actually, the other languages written on Chinese currency are, besides Mandarin, which is the national language, the others are Tibetan, Mongolian, and Zhuang ethnic language, and Uyghur language. So all these languages are all written, 5 languages written on China's currencies. And I think people in the West are familiar with Uyghur and Tibetan and Mongolian because they don't know the Zhuang, whose language is also on the currency, because CIA never laid their eyes on Zhuang ethnic group. So probably people don't know. So this is the thing. Like, we put all the minority cultures in everywhere. Our currency. If anyone go to Xinjiang, go to Tibet, the eradicating their minorities language is a lie, because everything you see, every public sign you see is written at least in 2 languages. The
problem we have is I don't know who said it. He said that a lie can travel around the globe before truth has tied its own shoes.
Yeah.
So because the Western media and intelligence services have been way ahead in spreading lies and investing heavily into that. I mean, the United States Congress voted unanimously in 2021 in the Strategic Competition Act to allocate $300 million each year to encounter Chinese influence, which means they finance bloggers, media all over the world. That's a huge amount of money. It can buy a lot of pens. It can buy a lot of filmmakers. It can buy a lot of vloggers and all kinds of things. There is need to encounter that, because one important thing to remember is that you can't stop those people with showing them facts. Those people have already made their mind that they want to undermine and destroy China. That's their objective. They don't care about facts. But there are billions of people around the world who need to see the facts. Now, also the way you present the facts is also important. There should be an investment in the media, not to falsify things, but to show the the main facts. The other important thing, which I told people in my lectures in all these universities in China, because every time I spoke there, the students were so frustrated and angry. And they say China is trying to build things in the world. We are just contributing peacefully to the world. And why they are attacking us so harshly? Why are they lying about us? And I said, look, there is a background. I explained this background to them, this geopolitics, zero-sum game, the philosophy behind it, the objectives. But I said, remember one thing, keep doing the right thing. China is doing the right thing. And every week, if you have noticed, China is winning new friends. The Belt and Road is getting new members. Now we have 152 nations have joined the Belt and Road. The nations who are not in the Belt and Road are a minority now. They are around 40. So that's reality. Reality talks better than the propaganda. So China needs to continue doing the right thing by developing its own economy, developing its own culture, the way they see fit, but also continue supporting the Belt and Road and these economic development around the world. That's what really matters. This is what nations are now seeing. And the world has changed. The world where these journalists in the West and think tanks and the intelligence services is not in reality. They are in a never land. They really don't understand reality. Now, nations in Africa, even in Europe, but even especially in Africa and Asia and Latin America are now moving to this new paradigm of international relations with China. The BRICS nations, the Shanghai Cooperation Organization are leading. That's what really matters, not all this false propaganda. But of course, we have to face the propaganda with facts. And it's better, and that's what my point is, that if we have people from the United States, from Europe, travel to China and find these things for themselves, they would be actually very good messengers in their own communities and their societies to convey that. Because as you say, and it doesn't matter what you say as a Chinese or the Chinese embassy here says, they say, well, they are pushing the government line. So it's very important to have this communication with the people from all over the world to go to China, go to Xinjiang, and see the reality there. But actually, not only see that there are no problems there, there is something to learn there, which we can actually use in our community. Look at France today; it's burning because of the minorities or the immigrant minority Muslims, who most of them were born in France, but they're not considered as French citizens by the police, for example. But look at their living conditions. Look at the ghettos in all over Europe, where immigrants from Muslim countries and Africa live. That's a time bomb. That's where the problem is. And we have something to learn from China, because unless you improve the social, economic conditions of those minorities, those immigrants, you will have a time bomb ticking.
You know what? Many Muslim country leaders, Islamic figures visited Xinjiang, and they all said, well, it looks fine to me. I don't see any oppressions. I can share with you some of the posts and the videos. Let me see. This is the letter that the head of World Muslim Community Council published last year when he, together with all the delegations from Muslim countries, visited Xinjiang, and he published this letter. We congratulate China on the completion of the counter-terrorism plan in Xinjiang. Yeah. The level of attention that we found in Xinjiang embodies the determination of the Chinese leadership to serve all components of the people in the region. See, this is the leader, chairman of the World Muslim Communities Council. He said, we think China is doing a good job counter-terrorism in Xinjiang. And we find there's no evidence of oppressing Uyghur people. So this is the Twitter he published. He was hanging out with a group of Uyghur children he met in the market. I think, I'm not sure which city, but you can see the happy face and pleasure is not a performance, is not forced on them. They are not forced to smile. This is him. This is another tweet published by Muslim communities. They are congratulating Beijing's effort in combating terrorism and extremism. This is a delegation headed by His Excellency Dr. Ali Al Noami,
Naimi.
Naimi.
Yeah, from the Emirates, I guess.
Okay,
United
and they visited the Museum of Combating Terrorism and Extremism in Xinjiang. Actually, this the English translation is wrong, but this museum is what I mentioned earlier. It's in Urumqi in Xinjiang, the Museum of Combating Terrorism and Extremism, that they explain and showcase all the footage and pictures of the violence, terrorism activities took place in Xinjiang that are too violent to be shown online. So anyone who actually went there and know the history of understanding what really happened in China, they know there was a serious threat of separating the country. So since the West say, well, there's no religious freedom for Muslim people, well, the video is just from yesterday, the Korban Festival in Xinjiang. This video, can you see that video? This is in Kashgar in Xinjiang.
Yeah.
It's about 1 minute.
Yeah, that's where they get the sheep for the festival, because it's one of the rituals is to, which has an important. It's like you don't sacrifice human life for belief, because that's what the origin is. Yeah.
This footage was just from yesterday in Kashgar, because local people, Uyghurs, are celebrating this religious festival.
No, there's no doubt that I saw the Muslims in Beijing. I mean, the mosque was full on Friday prayer. It's good I went there early to find a place, because I can share with you later footage.
Speaking of that, this is the mosque in Beijing yesterday, because there are religious activities. Is that playing?
Yeah, no.
Hundreds of Muslims went to this mosque. China is home to over 20 million Muslims. The majority of Uyghurs and Hui, but there are also together there are 10 ethnic groups in China believe in Islam. This is a mosque in China, like you mentioned. Probably many people outside of China don't know that many mosques in China are in this traditional architecture, Chinese traditional architecture, because they were built hundreds of years ago, sometimes thousands of years ago, and they were part of Chinese culture. So many mosques are designed in this style.
Yeah, it shows that the assimilation of Islam into the Chinese culture, that this is not a foreigner, that this is what the Muslims are part of our society. And it's reflected in the architecture. But everywhere you can see inside these mosques reflections of the.
This is inside the mosque. They are doing their religious activity. This is the imam. This is the Changying Mosque, which is quite close to where I live. So the majority of group of people are Hui Muslims.
Yeah. And one fascinating thing that you discover is not like you have one mosque in every city. It's like you have hundreds of mosques in some cities. And you find mosques in Chengdu, at the end of the Tianfu Boulevard, where the Chairman Mao's statue is. Right behind him, there is one of the ancient mosques in Chengdu. Just right there at the Tianfu, I think, called Tianfu Square. But when I asked people, they said, well, which one of them? I've asked, where is the mosque? And they say, well, there are lots of mosques. Which one you want to see? So every Chinese city all over China, you have in every city tens of mosques. It's like, and the density of mosques are sometimes bigger than many Muslim countries. Like in Xinjiang, the density of mosques is actually much, much larger than usual, because obviously the Chinese authorities have allowed people to start mosques. That's one of the problems, that if you have mosques that are not licensed, then you don't know what's going on there, and then you get these extremists going there and spreading false teachings of Islam, which are more political than religious. And
you are an expert on Belt and Road Initiative as well, so I want people to know that the Western politicians, they targeted on Xinjiang, but they're not just targeting on Xinjiang. They're also targeting China. They are also targeting the whole Eurasia. Because if you look at where Xinjiang located, Xinjiang in the northwest of China, shares the border with 8 countries. And those countries are Russia, Kazakhstan, Kyrgyzstan, Mongolia, India, all these countries. So you know where they are targeting. And also Xinjiang, and it's like you mentioned, Xinjiang is a key location for Belt and Road Initiative for connecting the whole Eurasia. Many railways have already been built and are under construction now that will connect China with Central Asia, West Asia. It was crucial. And also this region is also rich in natural resources, all the minerals, all the oil, gas, solar energy, wind energy, everything. This region is so rich in natural resources. So it's well, through the history, we know it's not a surprise that America were targeting some places rich in natural resources. So
I'm very optimistic right now. I mean, I saw the recent Central Asia China summit in Xi'an. I missed it by a few days. I visited Xi'an like 10 days later. But this is very, very important. Now, the stabilization of the situation in Afghanistan, this is very important, that China, Pakistan, and Central Asia work together to actually get Afghanistan out of its humanitarian crisis, which was created by the West. It was created by the United States and Europe, who have been freezing money owned by the Afghani people, so they cannot buy food and medicine. But everything is blamed on the Taliban. Now, China is playing an important role in making sure that Afghanistan does not explode, that Afghanistan actually, also rich in natural resources and old history, can also develop as part of the Belt and Road Initiative. So I'm very, very optimistic that many of the operations for regime change, there was a regime change operation in Uzbekistan. There was recently one in Kazakhstan supported by the West, but all these are being exposed, and nations are realizing that their real, natural geoeconomic interest is working with China, but also with Russia, and also with Iran, and so on and so forth. So the Shanghai Cooperation Organization, the Belt and Road Initiative, is creating a completely new dynamic in that region based on economic interest, on dialogue among these nations, and realizing that all these intelligence games directed against China are also directed against them. And that whole operation is collapsing. And many nations, and now that Saudi Arabia and Iran, with the help of China, have reconciled. So we will have a landmass from the Pacific in East Asia, China, all the way through the whole of Eurasia, Central Asia, like Russia, all the way to Belarus, but also West Asia, to the Mediterranean, the Gulf, South Asia, Pakistan. Hopefully, Pakistan and India will bridge their differences. So you will have a landmass, a block of geo-economic cooperation, which is also based on history, historical, cultural dialogue. This is very, very fascinating for me. I'm very, very optimistic, although the world is very dangerous. But the danger is not coming from inside those countries, inside those regions. The danger is coming from outside by manipulating the ethnic, religious differences to continue the destabilization and weaken Russia, China, and other nations. But now, with China's intervention mainly, these differences are being resolved and replaced by economic coexistence, win-win cooperation. That's very, very important to keep in mind.
Thank you, Hussein. And to those of you who are interested in learning more about Belt and Road Initiative, follow Hussein's Twitter account, his work, and you tell us where to find your work.
Yeah, it's a Belt and Road Institute in Sweden. This is where we work a lot on the Belt and Road Initiative and all its aspects. We just had a international webinar on the cultural Belt and Road, on the Global Civilization Initiative. But also you can find it on schillerinstitute.org, Schiller Institute. If you Google that, you will find more. If you Google my name on the screen, you will also get there.
Thank you. And also follow my work as well, because I've recently come back from Xinjiang. I recently come back from Xinjiang again. So I made some vlogs and documentaries to show how much change took place in Xinjiang in the past few years. So subscribe to my YouTube channel. And also I wrote articles for CGTN as well. So feel free to follow my content on Xinjiang. And I think I'm planning to travel to different Belt and Road countries this year. So soon I will show you different projects, what's going on, probably in Pakistan and in Africa. So stay tuned, follow our work, and thank you for watching, and see you next time.